Well, what you found here is episode 11 of a little podcast I like to call A Level Deeper. It's a show about meaningful conversation, and this one definitely lives up to that name. My conversation today is entitled Making a Generational Impact with Kimberly Tessmer. At the end of the conversations that I host, I often ask my guests who they know who would be a good guest for the show. Kimberly, my guest today, was recommended by Kelly McMullen, and if you listen to my conversation with Kelly, you'll know exactly why I didn't take her recommendation lightly. Kimberly has held many professional titles in her life, from saleswoman to agent, yoga instructor, offering Thai massage, and so much more. And what struck me the most was her most recent role of mentor. So much of Kimberly's story stems from an early childhood experience that begins with a swimming pool, and while I don't want to spoil it, I will say that despite this story, Kimberly doesn't have any regrets about her upbringing.
Somebody asked me if you could go back and tell your younger self, like if you could have a conversation with your younger self, what would you say? Gosh, I don't know if I'd say anything.
In her newest chapter of mentoring, teaching, and influencing Black students around mental health, financial literacy, physical health, and so much more, Kimberly is coming up against new fears in her life.
And for me, it's not fear of failure. It's more of a fear of success.
In this episode, Kimberly and I talk about her upbringing and identity as an athlete and the impact it had on her life. We talk about dealing with the fear of not failure, but the fear of success, and how Kimberly is making an impact that will stretch many, many years down the line. Also, before we start the episode, I am excited to share that I now have a video version of the podcast available. The podcast episodes on YouTube will come out later on Tuesdays, and you can find them by searching for my channel, A Level Deeper Podcast. All right, this episode of the show is entitled Making a Generational Impact. It's with Kimberly Tessmer, and it starts now. Then typically I give a disclaimer about my internet connection because we're in the van, but I'm not in the van today. So
I was going to say, are you
okay.
in a van? Are you in the van? It looks like I don't know where you are, but it looks like a room.
This is a room. Yes.
It could be a backdrop. You got to get a backdrop in the van.
Yeah. I gotta get this as a backdrop, or like something that makes it look bigger. Well, what's been cool is like I've had a couple of episodes where I've filmed we have two big windows in the back. I don't know if you saw, obviously you saw the van, but I'm not sure if you saw
Yes.
on the back on both sides, we have two big windows. And so
Yes.
I'll sit right in front of those windows, and like I think it was the second episode that I recorded, I was sitting with the mountains in Alaska, just sitting in the background of the window. So sometimes I get some really cool shots when I'm in the van that being in a house can't give quite the same look and feel.
Yes. I think that is just like one of the coolest things ever, that you guys just live in a van. That is like to me one of the epitomes of freedom. It's just and detachment. I mean, where everybody's like, oh, that's probably the coolest thing, but I there's no way I could do it.
How come?
Well, that's what everybody says. Now, I think I could do it, but I don't know for how long. You get just used to, I'm a creature of habit. I try not to be, but I think I'm pretty much a creature of habit, and having, space, it's one of those things that I wouldn't say I wouldn't do it without trying to do it, because I always think I could do like we watched, my husband and I watched the Tiny House. It's like, I could do Tiny House. And he's like, no way. What are you going to do? What are you going to do with all your, it's all the stuff, it's all the attachment to all the things. But I think if I was forced to, that I could figure it out. I think I could. I think I could.
That to me is the whole thing about it, is that there's so many aspects of the lifestyle of living in a van that are incredibly, they're very inconvenient. And it's not really ideal for many reasons. But when you talk about having space, or the things, like a couple of the things that I've just noticed and have been interesting, are that from a things standpoint, you really become very aware and surprised at how little you actually do need on a daily basis. And as far as
Yes.
space, you find new ways and different ways to create that space or give yourself the
Hmm.
space that you need. And so we were kind of joking around before we started recording about, having two people working from home. You and your husband both are working from home
Yeah.
today, and that's my wife and I's reality all the time, especially
Yeah.
when we're living in 45 square feet together. But
Oh my
you
gosh.
find ways to get outside, and you go to coffee shops, and you're in new towns, and
Yeah.
it's amazing how you can end up creating a sense of space even when you exist in something that is very small and very not
Absolutely.
normal.
Absolutely. And just like you were saying, you had a backdrop of, of Alaska. You open the doors in your space are mountains and glaciers. I mean, forget about it. I mean, just, that alone would trade off, as I look at a closet full of clothes that I hardly wear, maybe twice a year. It's like and as a society, we collect so many things that we think we need, but we don't. I mean, my husband and I were talking not too long ago about all these storage units that are popping up everywhere, like where there's space, where there's land. If it's not like, a soccer complex or, ginormous, these like a soccer complex with baseball diamonds and indoor basketball facilities, like these huge facilities, because it always starts out as a steel structure. And then it's like all of a sudden, use storage. And the people, we just have so much stuff. And, we kind of go through those purges, usually in the spring. We're kind of doing one now where, because my mother-in-law passed away in April, and just kind of going through all the stuff. There's so much. It's like, what do we need this for? And it kind of stems in us to, to start getting rid of stuff. Like, do we want our kids to have to go through all this, when the time comes? But yeah, we want things around us, right? We want to hold on to the attachment of whether it's the memory or, and I'm looking at half of the stuff that I have, and it's like, there's no generational, there's no generational attachment or meaning. It's like it didn't come from generations. It's just stuff that I've accumulated and I think I need. So yeah, I think it's pretty cool that you guys do that.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that. You mentioned the word detachment and attachment both now in our conversation. I'm curious about, tell me more about this idea of detachment. And part of what you said maybe appealed to you about getting rid of some of the stuff is the idea of detachment. What does that kind of mean or signify for you?
Yeah. Oh man. For me, it's looking at maybe the comforts of life that I've gotten used to, that I've gotten comfortable with, maybe that I've even begun to depend on, and try to, question or challenge myself into, do I really need this? And then can I detach from the need or the idea that I need it? So for me, detachment is really challenging all of my attachments that I recognize that I have. Oh, there's just so many kind of things kind of swirling through my mind right now, and things that I'm working on. Obviously, I just came back from retreat, that I got to spend so much wonderful time with your amazing wife. And that, she's amazing, right? You're married to her, but just to say that she's absolutely amazing. And to have the opportunity to meet you there briefly. Obviously, it was a women's only retreat, so you couldn't stay. But
yeah, well, just to bring in our listeners, it's just amazing how the world works sometimes. So
yes.
I was introduced to Kimberly through Kelly McMullen, who I had on the podcast a couple episodes ago. If you haven't listened to that episode, I would encourage you to do so.
Good.
And at the end of my episodes, I typically ask my guests, I say, who is someone that you know that I should have on the show? And Kelly mentioned your name. She mentioned you. And so as Kimberly and I were going through the scheduling process, then I was dropping my wife off at this retreat that Kimberly was talking about that I just rudely interrupted. But I got to And then all of a sudden, as we're pulling in, I'm dropping my wife off, and she says, "Oh, that's Kimberly." And I jumped out and I said, "Oh my gosh, Kimberly!" And it was just so cool to
Yay!
be able to actually meet you in person before, because we do all of these recordings virtually. I just thought that was such a cool
Yes.
moment, and it's always amazing to me how the universe works. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there to give people context that we actually did get the chance to meet a few days ago, but
Yes.
we did not know each other previously.
Yes. Yes. And that was super cool. And it was cool to know that you were tall. I had no idea. You don't know what people are. There's so many times, like kind of through COVID, where everything, like we did a lot of stuff online. I started yoga teacher training, my 300 hour. I have my 200 hour certification, but I started yoga teacher training, the 300 hour, through Citizen Yoga, which is what I'm almost finished with. I'm so excited. But it was all online. And then, COVID settled and there was a retreat in Tulum. And I went on that retreat. And that was the first time I met everybody in person. They were like, "Oh my gosh, you're tall." We had no idea. You've only been on the screen. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you're so tiny. I had no idea." So yeah, those kind of things are special. And I love how the universe does work. But I don't know what we were talking about
Well,
with
okay, so
the
tell us
retreat.
more about the retreat experience, because since my wife Eileen has come back, she and I have been having tons of conversations, and it was a really, really impactful experience for her. And so I've got to imagine you probably had a similar experience. Tell me about some of what maybe happened or came up for you during this retreat process.
Yeah. So man, it was transformative. It was such an amazing experience. And I came at it from a slightly different, perspective. I was going as a practitioner. I do Thai massage. And so I'm a body worker, in addition to being a yoga instructor, but I was going to be a provider, and people would sign up and, you know, handle services. Well, the way they did the scheduling, which was, pretty brilliant and very intentional, was that providers could also take part in the retreat, in the classes, and most of the experiences we were able to do. And during the free time is when we would do, practice and do our services and hold space for people. And I really wasn't aware of that. I was thinking that, I'll just go, I'll be too tired. I'm going to be, I use my body for what I do for other people. And I was like, there's just no way I'll have the capacity or the energy to do both. Well, I did. I had the energy and the capacity, and it was amazing. It was exhausting, but I am still processing so much. So I've had a lot of conversations with my husband, with a couple friends. I've done a lot of journaling, and I'm still processing so much. But I think one of the biggest things, oh, there's so many big things. I can't say one of the biggest things, but one of the things that came up in this retreat, and that's why it's so important, I think, to connect and share, is that one of the gals was, we were in a sharing circle, and she mentioned that she wanted to bring more intention in her life instead of perfection. And I think we all strive for perfection. And I think I spend more time trying to get things perfect versus putting special intention behind it. And that was one of those things that was kind of jarring. It's like, I get a little OCD. There's certain things, with the dishes, they have to be done as soon as dinner's done. I'm doing dishes during dinner so that the kitchen can be clean, and then I can finally relax. But there's always something extra that comes in to trying to make something perfect, where I could just be spending time either chatting with my husband or sitting on the couch, just taking time to take rest. I think as a society, and I think, women in particular, I can speak for, because I am one, is that we want things so perfect that we're spending unnecessary time trying to achieve that perfection when it's just the intention. I mean, my husband appreciates that I cook dinner. Why can't that be enough for me? But I want it to be perfect. I want it to be clean, the counters wiped off, everything bleached, and then ready for the next day. So that's maybe a half an hour a day that I spend extra on perfection, where my intention can be so much better served spending time having a conversation with him, whether it's random or, I mean, and he's very self-sufficient, so it's not like he needs it, but to just have that, deeper connection. So that was something that really resonated, and it kind of became the theme, not the theme, but one of the underlying, we talked about it all the time, just that remembering to be, is the intention behind it and not trying to be so, perfect.
Yeah, as you look at this desire to be perfect, this tendency towards
Mm-hmm.
perfection, what do you think it is that's behind it for you that leads you to want to take this extra time to do all these extra things, to show up a certain way or to have things a certain way? What's behind that for you?
I think from that's a really good question. I think that probably started to stem. I mean, I'm sure it's probably something that I've had since childhood, but it wasn't like I was trying to be perfect in school. I wasn't trying to be. It came more for athletics. I was an athlete. Still am an athlete. I'm still an athlete. We always say I used to be an athlete. I'm still an athlete. If you've done a Kelly McMullen class, you're an athlete.
Absolutely.
Yeah, or Kelly McMullen class, particularly a release class, but do even her fusion. You are a athlete. You're an athlete. But I think it came from probably my time in athletics. I played 3 or 4 sports in high school, so I had the luxury of being able to be a multi-sport athlete. Where nowadays, unfortunately, kids, and my son included, he's 19 years old, but when he was in school, he kind of had to choose what sport, and he did basketball and he did soccer, and he ended up choosing soccer, and that was by middle school, so that you could keep up, and then it was year round. But anyway, I was a 4-sport athlete, and I got to choose what sport I went to college to play, because I was recruited for basketball and softball and volleyball, and I ended up choosing volleyball, and got an opportunity to play Division I athletics at Western. Go Broncos! Western Michigan University, go Broncos! Who are having an amazing season this year as well. I think they're 11-0, but I think it started there. Perfection. I had a lot of natural ability, God-given ability. Thank you for family, for DNA, for all of those things. And when I got to college, I had this realization that I didn't just walk into the room and win anymore. I wasn't always the tallest. I was always the tallest in high school. Very rarely was there anyone taller than me. I'm 6'1", and with shoes on, I think I may, with shoes on, you do that. We do that way. We bump it up a
couple
little
more.
bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple more. And when I went to Western, the way it worked there, and I was a red shirt. I was a freshman because I came from a not a very solid volleyball background in high school, because our coach was an aerobics instructor. But I ended up playing club. So that's what got me exposure with volleyball to Western. So they saw an athlete and they saw potential, and then trained the technique. When I got to Western, they did numbers based on height. So there was the captain, and then it was tallest to shortest, and that's how you were numbered. I was number 6, and I'm like, oh, these girls are huge. So my God-given talent wasn't enough. And the coaching staff, I had access to all of this. There was the weight room, there was the strength and conditioning. Nutrition wasn't really talked about much, but we did body fat and training. And I started to realize that if I took my, what I already had and what I already did just naturally, and then added all of these techniques, the speed, the agility, the extra work. I would come in early and then stay late and do the Aerodyne bike sprints and, all those things because, I believe that I had the potential to go beyond collegiate volleyball. And that became a desire for me. And then I think that was where I kind of started developing this perfection. I had to do this many sprints. I had to do, I had to lift this many weights and I could be stronger than anybody else. And so it was more of a competitive thing, but I think that's what kind of started my whole perfection. I do these things and I will get this and I will be at this level. We played at a high level. We had the Mid-American Conference streak. I think it was 132 wins in a row or, something like that. I might still be a record holder. Yeah, I might still be a record holder, but it was kind of that competitive. It's just this competitive. It was something that I always had. And then when I was able to put work to what came natural, it just kind of sparked something. And that's where my need or desire for perfectionism started, if that makes sense.
It does.
When I kind of think about it and trace back to, I haven't talked about these kind of things in geez, I don't know if ever or in a long, long time, but.
No, it's great. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I'm really curious about you. You mentioned in this process of going from high school to collegiate volleyball, you said, I couldn't just walk into the room and win anymore. And I've got to imagine that there's got to be some more behind that. Tell us about what that feeling was like, because from what I'm hearing, it sounds like through high school, you had the height, you had the athleticism that you could essentially just show up and you would just win. It was just sort of a given thing. And then that stopped. What was that process like for you?
It was very humbling. It's kind of one of those things where, you just you get your ass kicked. It's I realized how little skill I had. And even though, it's Division I, it was Western Michigan University. It was such a big deal. It was always in the newspapers, in high school so I was a swimmer, which as a Black girl was not very popular back in the 80s. I graduated in 88. So in middle school, I was on the Aquacats, and I joined the Aquacats because I had, I'm going back. My mom was a teacher, grew up in a single parent home. It was myself and my sister. I have an older sister, and we would camp every summer and go to KOA camps because that was, they had the I could live in a van. We used to do a pop-up camper. So I got that in my history. But we would go to KOA camps because they had pools, they had playgrounds, it was just these great safe places. And we were at a camp and we were playing around the pool, and I hadn't had swimming lessons yet. I didn't know how to swim. And we were playing in the pool, and this guy was throwing kids in and just, kind of launching kids in. They were all having fun. And he grabbed me and threw me in. And I'm like, as I'm flying through the air and going into the water, I'm like, I can't swim. Now, I don't remember if the water was even over my head, if it was deep, but I remember treading water. And when I looked at my mom and I saw come out of her mouth, she can't swim, I immediately realized I can't swim, and I went underwater. So fast forward, I didn't drown, obviously, but, I had the freak out and I was, crying, and I ended up getting swim lessons and joining the swim team. And I wanted to be the best swimmer ever. I'm walking through the school, and it was my freshman year, and I'm on the swim team, and, I'm always the only Black person there. Every now and then there was another one. I love swimming. And as I'm walking through the halls at school, a basketball coach comes up to me and says, "Why aren't you playing basketball?" Like, "Oh, I swim and it's the same season, so I can't." Well, apparently, one of the boys that I was dating and a few other people the coach knew that were, on the team, he got them to start working on me to join the basketball team. And I'm like, I don't know anything about basketball. I don't even know how, the steps you got to take and dribbling, and which I never figured out. And free throws were not my thing. But somehow they convinced me my sophomore year. I walked onto the court and I played, and I was going to join the basketball team. I didn't know anything about basketball. This is a long, a long story to say that I walked on the court and they put the ball in my hands and kind of gave me direction on what to do, where to put the ball. And I did well without really knowing what I was doing, because I was tall. I could just, reach up, and I was one of the, I think, lead rebounders, and we did really well, and, made it to regionals. And, so I ended up playing for 3 years, and obviously I didn't dribble. I was a center. Dribbling was not my thing. It was boxing out. It was rebounding. It was putbacks. Right. And I went from swimming and understanding everything about swimming to basketball, knowing nothing about basketball, and being able to be successful. And basically it was for showing up. I mean, I did the practices. I never missed practices. I was committed to practices. We ran sprints. I remember twisting my ankle because I had shitty shoes, because it didn't, we didn't know. And my mom was a single parent as well. But so having that experience gave me like a false sense of security, a false sense of ability. I think back, and I don't think I didn't work hard in practice. So it wasn't like I was just showing up and, give me the ball. Our team worked hard, but I was still able to walk in and be successful. I walked into a lot of rooms and grabbed attention just because of my size. And my sister and I, we were on a forensics team. So we did a lot of speech competition, and we were good. We were good. She did poetry. I did prose duo we won state, So we did put in the work, but we walked in and we won. Just walking through the door in a lot of places either scored some points right away. So there was kind of that intimidation factor. And walking into Western, it was like, welcome, number 6, walk in as number 1, so it was very humbling. It was very eye-opening. It was very much, and I was a red shirt. They redshirted me, and that was going to be part of the plan. So I did everything the team did. I dressed, I warmed up, but the minute competition start, I stayed on the sidelines. And that was very eye-opening for me, because I'm like, I know if I got in there, I could do this. But, coach was very smart, and I had 4 years to come back of eligibility. And 2 of those years I was able, I was a captain, and, had the opportunity, but again, put in the work for that level of perfection. That's where that changed in college. It's like, I worked hard to get to the level and to be able to play at the level and experience the level that I did. So it was more than just showing up once I went to college. And that's probably that's continued. That's continued.
Here's a fun fact for you. Podcasting is hard. And it's not just hard, it actually costs me money to create the show. It takes hours of my time to interview and edit and produce each episode. And so maybe you're wondering, why do I do it? Frankly, I just love it. And if you love it anywhere near as much as I do, maybe you'd consider financially supporting the show, and by doing so, supporting meaningful conversations like the ones we have here. I've got a link to a Patreon in the show notes where, for less than the cost of 2 lattes per month, you can help keep the show going. And as a thank you, You'll get access to exclusive content like weekly behind the scenes episodes where show superfan Heather and I chat about the interviews and share some behind the scenes info that you don't hear during the episodes. Those and more are all available on the Patreon, and you can find it linked in the show notes. Thank you in advance for your support, and let's get back to the episode. Yeah, I'm curious about that sort of continuation in your life, or what you took or learned from that experience, because I can really resonate with that. I mean, yeah, for me, it wasn't so much athletically; it was more, I guess, with my brain, so to speak. But going through middle school and high school and college, essentially, I could just kind of rely on the fact that, like, well, I was smart, and I could kind of walk into situations that I wasn't familiar with, and I could always just kind of bet on myself and rely on the fact that I can learn quickly, I can adapt, and that got me through a lot of situations in life where, like you said, it's not that I didn't put in effort, but I also didn't have to work extra hard. I didn't have to do a lot of preparation, and I could just kind of skate by, and do really well. And then, for me, it was once I got into my professional career, and especially once I decided to go on my own and explore entrepreneurship, that I was kind of awakened to the idea that, I can't just walk into every situation anymore and have people immediately, based on interacting with me or whatever, I wasn't guaranteed success any longer. And that was kind of hard for me, because I felt like that was something I could always rely on and something I could always bet on. And then I had to go through this experience of sort of relearning, well, what can I place my self-worth and my self-value in? And so I'm curious how that experience has impacted you in the rest of your life.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good question, and a good point. And yeah, because I too, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm Kimberly's yoga and more. I mean, it's just me. I don't have a staff, or anybody to. I have lots of support, but there's that thing in, and I've always played team sports. I've never done individual sports where it's not just me, right? It wasn't just me. The pass wasn't perfect. The set was off a little bit. I can only do what I can do. So there's a level of, not comfort with the team, but there's not that when you're on a tennis court, it's just you and the other person, right?
Right.
And I'd never been in that type of a situation. I always had the team support. I, I can only do so much. I need what the speed of the leader is the speed of the team, right? Or you're as strong as your weakest link, right? So it wasn't anything that ever fell on me. And, I graduated from college and went into the business world. So I was in corporate America. I've done a little bit of everything. I've been worked in hospice. I've worked in the automotive industry, on the auction end, the wholesale auction end. I've worked on the retail end, car dealerships, from finance to sales, and I've done the travel business. But when I stepped out on my own, that was where I think a lot of, and that's things that I'm still processing, and things that I'm still dealing with, where fear started to set in. It's like, can I fly on my own? One of the things that I chatted a little bit with Kelly about at the retreat is she asked me, she goes, what is it that keeps you from shining so bright? As bright, as bright as you can. And it's fear. And for me, it's not fear of failure. It's more of a fear of success. And then her question was, well, why do you fear success? What do you fear about success? It was like the responsibility that comes with, when you want to get to that next level and then you work hard and you do it. Now what? Now you're a little higher, or a little farther to fall. And I'm kind of still processing that, but I do understand that fear that comes in isn't my voice. The speaking inside of me, it's a different voice. It's not mine. It's maybe the voice of my mom, when she said, I was swimming, I was staying afloat, and I saw her say, she can't swim. And then I kind of said, yeah, I can't swim. I went underwater. Is it the voice of our ancestors? Is the voice of those people that maybe were in my life at the time? I'm going to go play volleyball. Oh, you're going to go play that sport. Or I was in swimming. That's a white sport. I was in volleyball. That's a white sport. You need to play basketball. That's a black sport. So that stepping out on my own, all of those type of voices and feelings kind of started, that's what was in me. That's what was coming up. And that's what I feel like is not kept me, because I feel like I've done an amazing job. And, when you look on paper, successful, but not quite where, I want to be yet. I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet. So those are the things that you go to retreats for, right? You go to coaching and mentoring for, that you talk about on podcasts, right? Is when you verbalize things, is it makes it real. And then there's accountability. And I think I do better. I know I do better with accountability. If I can get up and I don't have any plans for the day can pass by and I'm like, the day's done, but to have that, that level of accountability. Okay, I got to do it. That's one of the reasons I got into fitness, is because I wasn't doing it on my own. Once college ended, we worked out every day. We had phases. We had in preseason 3-a-days, all the things, right? All the structure, all the responsibility. You do this, you do this. This is the outcome. This is what happens. Well, when that ended, it was just kind of like, I don't have to do it anymore. But then if you're eating as much as you were, all the things, right? You're out of shape and everything happens. So when I was looking at doing something, in addition, when I was in the, corporate world, and I was like starting to look, I've always been like a side hustle. I've been a side hustle girl. I always got side hustles. I said, well, I can do, make extra money bartending or waitressing, something in customer service. And I'm like looking at all these things and I'm like, wait a minute. If I do something in the fitness world, then I have a responsibility. Like, people are showing up for my classes. So I started doing some jazzercise classes that were local. I was living in Allegan. It was a previous marriage. It was after the birth of my son. I was just like, okay, I need to lose some weight. And I'm doing it on my own wasn't working. And so I started going to these jazzercise classes and I was having the best time of my life. And the instructor was talking about, there's certifications coming up. You should come be a teacher for me. I'm like, I can't teach people. It's like, I'm not a teacher. My mom was a teacher. I was like, I'm never going to be an educator. It wasn't too long ago that I realized that I am an educator, by the way, just in a different way, not in a classroom format. But right. So I was like, okay, I can do this. This is great. I had a team. I had a group of people, this little group, and I'd always be in my same spot and I'd have 2 girls on my side and, the one in front that I'd follow. And, it just felt so good. So I was like, okay, I can get certified to do this, because people show up for the class and I got to teach it and I got to practice the moves. So again, there was that level of responsibility, accountability. And that's kind of what I needed to be where I am today. And still, I teach yoga classes. People show up for my classes. I have to prepare. I have to be, ready. And it forces me to stay on track. And that's me. Some people, God love them, can do it on their own. I can't. I even did triathlons, which I guess is an individual sport, but we always trained as a team. I was never by myself. I was never in the water by myself. I was always worried about, what if I get a cramp and drown? I'm like, well, I'm not going to be first. And the goal is to, not be last, but, there are always kind of people around. So I kind of, I'm just that team oriented kind of person. That's where I draw the most energy from. The most comfort from. So yeah, breaking off into the entrepreneurial world. Ooh, it's scary. It is scary.
The spotlight is on you now. right? And
Yes.
you don't necessarily
Yes.
have that team. I want to go back to this. I really appreciate you sharing about the fear of success, because
Mm,
I think oftentimes a lot of people can associate with the fear of failure, and maybe
yeah.
we often think that we're afraid of failure, but
Hmm.
I'm I tend to think, and if I really diagnose myself and the things that I'm afraid of, I actually think it does tend to be that I'm more afraid of the success and what that might mean as opposed to the
Yes.
failure. And I wonder if that might be the case for a lot of people. You mentioned the word responsibility with it, in that
Hmm.
in being afraid of your success, that was going to bring additional responsibility. And I'm curious if, is there an element of, you've talked about as a black woman that you went into swimming, even though that was a sport where people were like, what, why are you doing that? And
Yeah.
you chose to go some of these paths that were different. And I came across something that you had written, I think it was earlier this year, about being a black woman in yoga and in the yoga world. And
Hmm.
here you are again choosing a sort of different path that's not the traditional path. Is there, as we talk about fear and we talk about responsibility,
Hmm.
is there an element of being a black woman in a space that is not traditionally where black people are? Is that part of
Hmm.
this responsibility that you feel, or fear that you feel with the success that you might have?
Absolutely. So, yeah, it's these realms and these worlds that I've kind of found myself in initially have got me there because of, I almost drowned. Didn't want that to happen again. I wanted to learn how to swim. So I got swim lessons. And then there's like, oh, aquacats, let's join that swim team so I can be better at it. Yoga found me at a time I've been practicing for 27 years. Like I do, since college, a part of our training, I stumbled onto some yoga classes that were cool. It's like, oh, this is cool. I can handle this. This is something I can do. Especially when I was kind of getting back into fitness, maybe a little bit more. I was like, oh, I can hang with these ladies. Side note, my first jazzercise class that I ever took, I was like, all these old ladies, it's like, oh, I got this. Cause I'm a past athlete. I puked. I like literally puked after a jazzercise class. And I'm like, what just happened?
One of those
Um,
sneaky workouts. Sneaky.
yeah, it's like the jump, they're just dancing, having fun with their little leg warmers. They were still wearing leg warmers when I started. But yeah, so when yoga circled back around and found me, I just ended a marriage of 16 years and moved to Kalamazoo with my son because I wanted him to have more diversity. I found a studio through Groupon. I needed to save money. I was now on my own income wise. Um, and went to the studio. And when I walked in the door, I felt so welcome. And I also realized that there were no Black people there. It was a hot yoga studio. And I'm like, where you, I understood why. This was in Portage, which is an area that is not predominantly Black, versus Kalamazoo, which is where I do some other work in now. But I felt so incredibly welcome there. Fell in love with the practice, fell in love with the heat because it was a hot yoga studio and they did this sequence, their signature sequence where you do it's the same poses, same flow, but every time I went, it was different. The instructor was different. The music was different. The message was different. My body's response was different. I got hooked. And the more time I spent at the studio, the more I kind of started thinking, I was like, I got to get some Black people here. They need to experience this.
What was it that made you feel so welcome and so comfortable? If you looked around and you didn't see anyone that looked like you, but yet it felt different, it felt comfortable. What was that?
It was the response of the staff and the employees. I've walked into studios before, and I always go, whenever I travel, I try different studios, and I just walk in, I sign up or don't sign up. I walk in I don't announce, I'm Kimberly, I'm a yoga instructor, and I'm from, I don't do that. I just walk in like a regular person. And the majority of the time, I am greeted with, is there something I can help you with? Well, yeah, I'm here for a fucking yoga class. What else would you be helping me with? I'm not here to sell anything. It's like, do you know that this is a yoga? You know what I mean? Just that's what I'm greeted with a lot. Or, can I help you? Instead of like, welcome, you're here for yoga. Have you ever been here before? I haven't seen you. Have you been here before? And that welcoming in made me feel like this is a place for me. And it immediately became my home. But so many Black people wouldn't just walk into a studio, especially in a predominantly white town, and it's a hot yoga studio. We're very, the Black population, especially Black female, are very particular about our hair. We get our hair done, and it can't be getting sweat. It can't get wet. We don't, there's just things that don't happen, and hot yoga is one of those things.
It's hot.
It's hot. But I think in my upbringing and how I was raised, my grandparents were entrepreneurs. They were very involved and these are my mom's parents and raising us, because again, my mom was an educator and she worked. Growing up in the town that I grew up in Albion, it was a great mix. It was a really, really good mix of Black, white, Hispanic. So I never, even though I was the only one most of the time on the swim team, I never felt singled out.
Okay.
Because of it. I'm sure if I look back, or if I think back, or if I, think back that, that there was, maybe, microaggressions or something, or people that, didn't know my hair was in braids and I would swim. They're on a swim cap like everybody else and swim. In the yoga space, it's the same thing. You throw your hair up, you get on your mat, and you move, and you breathe, and you pay attention to what's happening inside. That doesn't matter if you're Black or white or brown. It's the same. And being in this world, in this realm, has been life-changing, life-affirming, life-saving for me. And my whole goal, one of my goals is to break that stigma that it's not for Black people as well. That we can't experience this settling of the nervous system, this feeling of community, this all the things that happen from just walking through the door and arriving on your mat. But to get to the door, right? I think you have to have a certain kind of mindset. Like, I don't give a shit. I don't care.
Yeah.
What anybody says.
It's intimidating.
It's very intimidating though. But once you get in the door, I think that whoever's at the front desk, or whatever teacher is out greeting people, that, having that, just that welcoming, is something so simple. A smile, welcome to class. My name's whatever. What's your name? Versus, can I help you? Is there something I can help you with? You know what I mean? It's just something that simple. It's like, well, yeah, I'm here to take you. Why else would I be here? That's one of my goals, is to change that.
Yeah. Tell me more about that. What does that look like for, what are some of your efforts in particular, or how can, I guess, like, what does that change look like? The yoga community as a whole, how can that community be more accepting of Black people, brown people, anyone?
Yeah.
What does that actually look like to you?
So to me, it looks like, and there's so many that I follow, and it is changing. It's not, there's studios, there's a couple studios and a few studios in Detroit, one I'm affiliated with, one I trained at, that are making a big difference. So for me, it's being on a larger scale, yoga wise, whether it's online, whether it's, teaching workshops, being visible. I do one of the things that's just my baby that I'm so incredibly proud of is a program in Kalamazoo that my girlfriends and I started. And she's a master's of social work and counseling and therapy and working on her PhD. And her sister is an RN and recently board certified nurse practitioner in psychotherapy. And myself, yoga instructor, mindfulness instructor, trauma informed. We all got together and kind of started thinking, what can we do for the youth? Where can we change? Her name is Valerie, and she owns a Synergy Center in Kalamazoo, Synergy Health Center. And her whole thing when she started this organization, and it's in the north side of Kalamazoo, which is a predominantly Black side of Kalamazoo. It is the north side of the tracks in Kalamazoo, is breaking the stigma in mental health in the Black and brown community. There is a huge stigma in mental health. We don't be telling people your business. You keep that quiet. You can go to the preacher, but then you're not really trusting that they're not keeping secrets. But you don't be talking to people about stuff. No. You don't do that. So there's that. And then there's the people that are available to talk to don't look like me. So there's so many barriers to get through for you to understand where I'm coming from just because of the color of my skin.
Right.
All the things that we have to endure, we've been through, we experience. So there's that too. So that's her whole goal, is breaking the stigma. So well, how do we bring both worlds? Because there's a stigma with yoga too. They think one of the first things that I do, especially when I'm working with Black and brown community, is one of the first things I say when I introduce myself is yoga is not a religion. It is a practice. It's a practice of awareness. And then it's collectively, the whole room, oh, okay. Cause when we're talking to the yoga stuff, they talk in different languages and we don't do that.
Why is it important for you to distinguish that it's not a religion? Tell me more about that.
Because it's not. And with the Black community, if it's something that looks like a religion, they're going to shun it. So then I'm never going to be able to get into that community or to that household to show them how much stress resilience I can teach them by something as simple as breath work and meditation or a yoga pose. Every yoga pose that we do activates and stimulates the vagus nerve, which, don't get me started. I'll nerd out about the vagus nerve and just the calming effects of the nervous system. When you're operating in fight or flight all the time, disease begins to set in. I mean, when you can't take a collective breath or a settling breath to just soften, to just let go. I mean, just imagine the generations of people that have not experienced the practice of yoga. That's what keeps me going. So we started a program called Mind Health Ambassadors, and we train 9th through 12th grade boys and girls. Black and brown is our focus. Everybody is welcome, though. We teach them mental health awareness and mindfulness. So I do mindfulness through the movement and practice of yoga. So we're arming them with tools, clinical and holistic, to be conduits in their school. So they become ambassadors. They are not therapists. They don't treat anybody, but they have this whole thing of tools. I understand. I know what social anxiety is. I know what PTSD is. I know what depression is. I understand, suicide. We have modules, and then I'm bringing in and teaching them how to soothe the nervous system, how to increase stress resilience, how to balance, and how to how to tap in to understand the sensations that are happening in my body and what the result of that is, right? I'm trying to make them more response versus reactionary. So we do this. We've done this 6-month program. We got a grant. My girlfriend Valerie is amazing at writing grants. Literally, it's like magic. We got a grant for a 2-year program. And so we've done it 2 years, and we just got renewed for 3 more years for this Mind Health Ambassador program. And
Wow.
it has been just the most amazingly rewarding thing. I walk into the room. I'm a yoga instructor. They've never seen anybody like me that does yoga. I mean, social media, I think to a certain extent helps, because you can search like, Black yoga teachers and you can get, you can get stuff, but to have them right in front of you and teaching you and, I mean, from the music to, I mean, my playlists, I gotta say, are pretty badass, but it's not like you're what I think a lot of people perceive yoga as. I'm a little more boot campish with my yoga. And that's, of course, why I love the space so much. A little more, push right to that edge, because that's when you're going to start finding out. That's when things are going to start coming up that we can work through with breath work and understanding. So, and on the mental health side, we have Black therapists. So the kids in this program get therapy, whether it's weekly or biweekly. Therapy is part of the program. They don't have to pay for this program. So it's grant-based. They don't have to pay for this program. So they get therapy so they can experience it. So they can talk firsthand about it. And if they already have a therapist, then they can continue to see that therapist. And we do like an assessment as part of the grant. They get exposed. We do a yoga studio experience. So we go to my home studio. They do, and it's always that transition where they close it down for us, but there's still a class getting out. So they're seeing, all these people kind of come and go, but they have the experience of walking up to and into a studio, being welcomed, just welcomed, not singled out or catching somebody off guard because it's like, oh, what are you, can I help you? So they have this experience. So that takes, some of that, that edge off, or that assumption takes away some of that assumption. They get financial literacy because they get a $500 award at the end of this program. Financial literacy is, again, something that there's a stigma in the Black community about, I mean, grandparents buried money in the backyard and put it in mattresses and under the mattress, that's where all the important documents stayed, so we are exposing them to, I mean, not just the mental health and the mindfulness. And I guess it is this mindfully living in all areas of your life. And that's one of the things that I try to teach: how to listen mindfully, eat mindfully, sit mindfully, all the things to integrate into life. But we're giving them all these tools that will never be taken away because they have the knowledge behind it now. They've experienced it. Like we practice all different kinds of breath work. We practice all different kinds of movement. And they always know, Miss KT, it's Miss KT's turn. We always start with mental health and we end with mindfulness. So then they can work through a lot of the difficult subjects and things that are about mental health. It's not comfortable. It's not comfortable, but the more we talk about it, the more we normalize it, the better it's going to be. So we have 30 ambassadors this year. I think the first year we started, we had 15 and then ended up graduating. We lose through fruition, we lose some. This year we're very strict. I mean, this is a job for them and we have high expectations. So if they miss, they either have to have a good reason. There's makeup work. There's, all these things, because we cover really important content and we meet 3 times a week. So we don't take up all of their time. And it's 10 hours a month. So, they have this experience, and then we end the experience with a retreat. We take them on a retreat. We get a coach. nice transportation. I mean, this is like high end. We go to this beautiful lake house south of Kalamazoo, and it's on a private lake. And we have a chef that cooks all of our meals for us. So these kids are pampered. And then during that retreat, we do yoga every morning, of course. And then they're working on projects to integrate mindfulness and mental health into their schools. What makes sense to them? You know what I mean? What would be meaningful to them? It's not us telling them what we want them to do, but they come up with their own program. And then we have the resources from the grant and the connections to support them in that. So that's what's just so exciting. And then past ambassadors become mentors to the new ambassadors training. So we have one in particular, but we have one that was a past ambassador that is very much involved in being a mentor and working and getting paid to assist us in this program right now. And so we just want it to just get exponential. We're making a generational impact. We're making an impact in schools. And this is just a brainchild that we came up with. I want to say 2020, or we started talking about 2019 and then COVID happened, which was a blessing in disguise because that gave us so much time to get the details and get the grants. And, so it's been an amazing, amazing program. Hopefully I haven't rambled on too much about it, but it has been life changing for me, and seeing these kids that need so much support, mental health and mindfully, that just didn't know where to go or didn't know what to do. So acting out, that's a trauma response, right? It's a response. So, why are they getting in trouble? Why are there so many fights? There's, one of the schools that we're very, very involved in, that we get most of our kids from, they have an average of 3.5 fights a day. So where else can we make the impact? And we're working on an accelerated program, which is like a week immersion of our ambassador program that we need to really capture. This program starts when school starts. So it starts in fall. So we lose football, soccer, cross country, and wrestling. And those are the kids we're trying to get,
Right.
Those athletes that have all of the social pressures, academic pressures, add athletics too, so we're trying to do an accelerated summer program so that we can capture those, or how do we cater this program to get, for athletes that we're missing in the time that this program runs. So, yeah, that's been a labor of love. And that's one of the things that for me is expanding that stigma, debunking the stigma in mental health and mindfulness. And so we're starting with teenagers, but their parents buy in, and then their parents share. So it becomes a generational impact. The newest thing that just happened, found out, is that we got a grant for me to conduct yoga teacher trainings for past ambassadors that are interested in being yoga instructors. So I get to give 10 scholarships to Black and brown boys and girls, young men, young women. Sorry, they don't like to be called boys and girls, to teens that are going to learn and get certified as a yoga and meditation instructor. And again, that's something that they have that they can always use to make an income, to build an empire if they decide, but and the more that I can certify or that I can inspire, the more normal it becomes. So if I can take 10 and have 10 little black and brown yoga instructors that can go out and teach and show that, yeah, we're here. We do this too. And then they can attract more people, and then they can attract more people. So for me, that's how it begins to change. But there's a lot of pressure in being that that light, that leader in the area that I'm in. And that's where fear starts to set in. And it's like, oh, there's no team.
Absolutely.
This is just me. What if it doesn't work? What if, so that's where it is. That's where it is for me. That's where I see the biggest change happening. And this program that we've been doing has been amazing. It has been amazing, and it's growing. People are hearing about, we always find out, how'd you hear about our program? We do marketing, and, oh, I heard about this from like Jeter's leaders. And we're like, oh, well, we need to make sure that, that we're staying connected with them, because they've, given us, quite a few students and leaders. And we're like, this is amazing. So we're just growing. We're in the very beginning. It was just kind of like, what is this? Mind, health ambassadors. And we were getting a lot of people. It's like, yeah, I've been trying to get my kid into counseling, and we're on a waiting list, or they didn't connect. And this just looks like a program that would be really helpful. So having parent buy-in is obviously huge. They got to get the kids there, right? Whatever your
Right.
kid signs up for is what parents sign up for, until they can drive. But it has been life-changing. It has been life-affirming. It has been life-saving. Again, those things just kind of come up to me, and the impact that we've been able to make with these teens has been immeasurable. It really has.
Well, I think back to little Kimberly getting thrown into the pool, and you being able to, in that moment, you were swimming and you were fine, and then you had an external voice, and nothing against your mom, but you had an external voice that
Yeah.
said, you can't do that. And now I think of, but what if you had been armed with someone like you now, who had told you, you know what, the water's okay and you can swim,
Yeah.
and here's how you do that. And how could have that story been different for you in your life? And now I think about the tens and hundreds and eventually thousands of people that you can reach, that you can make that experience for them different. And that's an incredibly,
Yeah.
incredibly powerful thing.
Wow, it is. Thank you. I never kind of drew that that connection, but yes, yeah. Thank you. It's yeah. I could have went under. I could have drowned. I could have just like sucked in all the water and not be here right now. It was meant. It was meant to be, which is sometimes hard to not verbalize, but to realize that all the pain and the setbacks and the failures that you go through, and then you look at something like this program that has made it all worth it. What if we didn't try? What if we said, oh no, what if we could waste so much time with what ifs? But I think it is important. Like, you don't want to spend a lot of time in the past, right? Spending time in a past that you can't change leads to depression. But I think it's important to reflect back, and so important. And I thank you for wanting to have this conversation with me, for making that connection back to KOA camp, when I got thrown in the water, and now what I'm able to do. Somebody asked me, if you could go back and tell your younger self, like, if you could have a conversation with your younger self, what would you say? Gosh, I don't know if I'd say anything. Would that change where I am right now? Because I'm very, very happy with where I am right now. And I'm excited about the future. There were some bad decisions. I'll probably say, don't go out with him, or, but when I look back and think, would I change anything? I guess I would say no, because if I change something, would I not be here right now? And those are the things those are those unknowns, like the mystical things that you don't know. Would I still end up here, or would I be somewhere else? So, other than believe in yourself, which I do, I have a wonderfully supportive family that no matter what I showed up and said, oh, this is where I'm working today, or this is what I'm into now. And they're like, okay, Kimmy, it's always like okay, Kimmy, we're proud of you. You do it. Um, family support is amazing. We do see a lot with the ambassadors that we've had the last 3 years. There's not the kind of support that I grew up with. Our generational, it was deep. It was my mom, my sister and I, my grandparents, her parents, and then my grandma's mom all lived in the same town within few miles of each other, and an aunt that lived right next door. Kids don't have that these days. Families so spread out or polarized or divided. That's a whole nother podcast, right? The kids are looking for support and connection, and we're able to give that to them in a way, even though it's structured and it's a program, and they're, a lot of them sign up like, I want that money. I want that $500. I want that $500 award at the end, and then they find out is so much more, which is kind of what happened with me with yoga. I went for a Groupon, and now look, you know what I mean? This is where I am today. After doing the teacher training and meeting Valerie at the studio that I did my training at, that's my home studio. That's where we take the kids. It's magical. I don't know how else to say it. It's divine.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, as we wrap up our conversation, I think that the work that you're doing is incredible. And I know that sometimes, we can be hard on ourselves, and finding that support can sometimes be difficult, but I hope I can at least be one voice that says keep going, because I think the work that you're doing is important. I think that it's meaningful, and I get chills just thinking about the impact that you are having and that you will continue to have. So keep going. If people wanted to learn more about you, learn more about the ambassador program, or get in contact with you, what are some ways that they could do that?
I have a website. It's Kimberly's Yoga and More, and it's all spelled out. Kimberly's Yoga and More at gmail.com is my email. And also at Kimberly's Yoga and More on Instagram or Facebook. That's where I do posting on ambassadors. The Urban Zone. I think on my website, there is a link to the Urban Zone and I'll double check that. And our Mind Health Ambassadors program. Again, we're entering into our 3rd year, and we have an amazing group of ambassadors in training. And we're just so excited. I mean, every year we're excited, but we're getting more and more excited, because this is the point where integration is actually becoming a part of the program. The program keeps growing. Side note, every year parents ask, can you do this for us? We need something like this.
Wow.
And so we're working on that. We've been asked, can you do it on the end of middle school? We need to get them younger. We're like, okay. So one of our goals is to become a national training center. We have our curriculum. And we're working on putting it together in a way where we can have people come in and do trainings and learn our program and take it and apply it to schools, community centers, church, wherever the need is. But to also go out and do training. So that's something that, that's, in our future and our plans. And yeah, we're a grant-based program. We are nonprofit. So donations are always appreciated at the Urban Zone. And again, I'll make sure that there is a link on my website. But yeah, if they just want to follow me on social media, they can direct message me, schedule an appointment for a Thai massage. They're amazing body work and assisted stretch. And just lots of great things to come. I have a retreat coming up. We just completed the website. It is a Queens of Color retreat, and we're going to Morocco in 2024. So we want to take Black women and take them to Morocco to experience to transform, to grow. It's called the Queens of Color Wellness Quest. And that will be on the website too. I'll make sure that's updated in the next couple of days because we just got the website ready. So, lots of exciting things that have been in the works for a long time. It's just kind of starting to all kind of come together. So hopefully we'll be shining.
I love it. It's amazing. Well, thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing your work. And again, keep going. Keep going. Thank you so much for tuning in to my conversation with Kimberly. If you enjoyed it, would you mind just taking a second and leaving a 5-star review? That'd really mean a lot to me. Helps grow the show, has an impact on reaching new people. So thank you in advance for being willing to do so. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're listening. And if you would like to support the show on a deeper level, consider heading to the Patreon, which is linked in the show notes. Okay, that's all for now, and I'll see you next week.